In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at retouching this kind of photo. That's right, food. Stick around and check it all out. Welcome to this video tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com, where today we're going to look at food photography retouching. I have this photo here that I shot at a local bar a few years ago, but we're going to retouch this photo. Well, this is the retouched version of it, and we're going to go back and use the raw file and retouch that. So the raw file is here, retouch food photography tutvid.dng, and this file is going to be available for download. All you have to do is check out the description of this video. I'm going to drag it here into Photoshop, give it a second, and it's going to open it up in Camera Raw, in the Camera Raw editor. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is hop over here to the camera calibration tab, and I'm going to choose the camera profile of camera neutral. It's just going to kind of tone down the highlights, generally reduce the contrast overall. I really am just looking to make sure that I'm bringing detail back in the actual white of the egg here. Now, I'm going to go back to the basic tab, and this is very rich, sort of hearty, greasy, I guess you could say, food, borderline, maybe even heading into the comfort food territory. So I want to instill a sense of depth and richness in this food. I want it to look very colorful and contrasty and very deep. Whereas if this, let's say it was a bunch of vegetables on maybe like a white or gray colored table, I would want that to be very bright and airy and, with a pop of contrast and sharpness. I want the photo to have some snap, as if it was as if the stalk of celery in the photo could just be snapped when the photo is bent. With this kind of food, however, we want to go for depth and richness and that type of thing. So I'm going to reduce the exposure overall to about 0.65 negative, and I'm going to boost contrast maybe to about plus 30 or so. I'm looking here at my highlights. I feel like I still need to knock them down a little bit, so I'm going to knock them down to about -10, and I'll do the same for whites, roughly -10, -13, whatever. And then, because we increase the contrast so much, I do still want to pull some light out of the shadows, so I'm going to boost shadows to about plus 50, and I think I'll do the same with black. Yeah, I'll push that to about plus 50 as well. So we're just, adjusting the way that the contrast is applied to the image. I'm going to go ahead and bump up the clarity maybe to about plus 10. That gives a good mid-tone punch. Again, it's going to add just structure and detail to the edges of the egg and the burger and the bacon and all of that. And I'm going to also... let's try reducing the vibrance a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. -10 looks good, wherever, anywhere between 0 and -10. I like that. After that, we're going to adjust the color, or the white balance, I should say, of this photo. So I'm going to just, well, I should say, typically this photo, and I have no excuse here because this photo was shot, I was using multiple lights. There was a light back here and a light over here, a light over top, a fill light off to the side, all kinds of stuff going on here. I could have shot a gray card with these so I could get perfect white balance every single photo and just copy that across the raw files. I didn't do that, so I'm just going to eye it up. I'm going to do it, just by what looks good to me right now. So I'm going to drag the temperature back. I'm going to keep going back. I know it's starting to look pretty purple. You know what? I'm going to stick with about 4700, 4650, whatever. That's good. And because there's kind of some purpley appearing stuff, I don't like that. We're going to get rid of that in a second. What I'm really focusing on is the white of the egg. If the white of the egg looks white, well, I know that that's fairly colorless in real life. So if that begins to look pretty neutral, everything else in the photo should also be kind of color corrected properly. Now, to get rid of some of the purple, I'm just going to grab the tint slider and drag it into the green territory, maybe about -10 or so. And then let's also hit the sharpening tab here. We'll just drag a little bit of pre-Photoshop sharpening into this. So I don't know, about 80, 88, whatever. I'm also going to go to the lens correction tab. I'm going to enable lens profile correction. There's not a ton of distortion. I was using the Canon's 100mm f2.8L lens, which is an amazing lens. So there's not really much distortion at all. What I'm going to do, though, is increase the darkening vignette around the edges just a little bit. You can see there's before, and I'm just going to darken it up just a touch. And then last but not least, we're going to also crop here in Adobe Camera Raw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out my crop over the entire image, and then I'm going to hold my Shift and Alt key. This would be Shift and Option on the Mac, and just drag it back inward a little bit. Position my crop. I'm looking to get rid of this big shadow on the front, basically, is what I'm trying to do here. There we go. And then if I need to tilt it just a touch, I can do that. There we go. Hit Enter or Return. All right, now the great thing about this is if we hit this link here in the bottom center of the Camera Raw editor, we can choose to open in Photoshop as a smart object, which is what I'm doing. what this is going to do when we hit open object, it's going to take a second. It's going to open this in Photoshop, but we have a smart object now, and we can, let's say we need to uncrop. We really want that lip of the table back in there. We can just double click the thumbnail and it's going to open Camera Raw Editor again. We grab the crop tool and boom, we can uncrop whatever we like. We're not going to do that, however. We're going to keep our crop the way it is. Now, one of the first things that I do before I start retouching, especially an image like this where there's really a lot of small blemishes that need to be cleaned up, is I create a new layer and I name that layer Notes. And we're still going to place our retouching notes on this layer. So I'm going to grab the brush tool, and the brush doesn't really matter. I mean, maybe a 50 pixel size brush is a little too large. We'll go back to like a 3. Yeah, something like that's cool. And then let's zoom in on this image, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start looking for imperfections and just circle them. So like the dark spot on the fry, the depressed highlights on the fry, right? Dark spot on the egg whites, this little bit of bacon grease hanging from the bacon, this little hair looking thing, whatever that is, this funky depressed area on the cheese, right? Anything like this on the cheese that we just want to make sure that we don't forget to clean up when we go through here. And maybe some of these, when we actually start to heal, we're going to make the executive decision at that point and say, you know what, it's really not that bad. We're going to leave that there. So I'm just going to run over the egg, you know, just anything that's colored differently. This piece of peppercorn, that can kind of be, if you like it, you can leave it. I'm going to get rid of it and just extend the highlight out. Here on the bun, a couple dark spots. I'm really just looking for stuff that looks like big imperfections or something that doesn't really flow with the general overall, I don't know. I'm just looking to smooth things out and make them a little bit nicer. Like the edge of the cheese looks a little weird there. All right, so now that we've done that, well, let's just back out, and you can see we have our complex notes. This is actually a fairly simple one to go over. But now we have our visual reference to go ahead and start retouching. We're going to create a layer beneath our notes layer here by holding down the Command or Control key and clicking on the new layer icon, new layer below, and we're going to name this layer Blemishes, just like so. We're going to grab our healing brush tool, this one right here, and we're going to look to the control bar and make sure that sample is set to current and below. This way we can retouch on a new layer and actually edit the layer beneath it without messing up the layer beneath it. So let's go over here and check out the fries. And again, we're working on this layer and below, so we don't need to worry about healing from our notes layer and getting, you know, black smears everywhere. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here. I'm actually going to make the notes go away for a second. Let's clean up this edge of the fry, make my brush a little bit bigger, and then hold down my Alt or Option key to sample, and then paint over that a little bit, paint over that. Get rid of anything that just basically doesn't look like it belongs. All right, so now with the bacon grease hanging down, we want to start with the edge of the plate by sampling the edge of the plate where it transitions to the darker backside of the fries, and then line that up, and then paint from that. I didn't quite line it up correctly. Let's try it again. There we go. And you can go in there and get a nice realistic heel pretty easily by working from a solid edge. So we would do the same thing here with the bottom side of the burger bun, just like that. You see that? Looks pretty good. But see, if you're like a pixel off, it becomes really noticeable. And again, I'm not going to go for absolute perfection here. We're going to try to, you know, make sure we do this in the interest of time as well. All right, great. Let's put our notes back on, and let's correct the egg white before we get into the cheese and the rest of the bottom of the bun. So we've got stuff here. I'm just going to kind of look at the egg too, and wherever I see stuff that I want to go away, I'll make that stuff disappear. All right, let's go to the edge of the highlight here, something like so. Okay, that's good, good. Just anything. We want the egg to look like the most beautiful egg you've ever seen, or roughly somewhere around that most beautiful egg ever. All right, that's great. Looks like I got that stuff. All right, let's attack the cheese here. Now, the most difficult part of the cheese is this little area where it's hanging down and it looks like there's a big green spot. What I'm going to do, because I can't really use the healing brush, is I'm grabbing the lasso tool. I just have the polygonal lasso tool, and I'm drawing a line through the orange part of the cheese and just up and over, and then connecting the dot. And now I'm going back to the heal tool, and I'm going to sample from the cheese up here, and I'm going to do one round of painting and another round of painting. And let's deselect that, make our brush really tiny, and just clean up any little edges that need to be cleaned up. And just add a little bit, you know, just going to extend that cheese downward a little bit and make it look a little bit more like the piece of cheese hanging down. All right, now at this point, we can go ahead and clean up whatever on the cheese we want to. It's really important to get this highlight really well, so I'm going to make sure I paint over that and get a nice highlight rebuilt there. That's great. Make sure that looks right. Oh, it looks a little funky. All right, so just like that, we just continue through and retouch everything. I'm going to drop this video into hyperspeed and finish retouching anything that needs to be cleaned up at this point, and I will be back in just a second. Now that we've done the healing, we're going to go ahead and begin the colorization process. We want to add color. Remember, we're trying to make this photo more rich. We're looking to add richness. So we're going to do that by first creating a solid color layer. So we're going to go solid color, and the color layer that I'm going to start with is 81 60 36. It's like this tanny brown color. We're going to set the blend mode to normal light, and you can see there's before, there's after. We obviously don't want the color over top of everything, so we're going to select the layer mask and use the hotkey Command-or-Control-I to flip that color, filling the mask with black and therefore hiding all of our color. Now I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to grab the brush tool. And with the brush tool, we're going to set the opacity of the brush tool to about 50% or so. I'm going to right click. I'm going to choose a slightly larger, softer edge brush. Maybe 300 is a little bit too much. Let's go, let's make the brush size a little smaller. And I've got fairly soft edges. Maybe I don't want them to be quite that soft. I'll go with a hardness of about 60 or so. And I'm just going to begin painting over the fries. The reason I set my brush to an opacity of 50% is just so I'm not putting the full effect down, and there are different parts of the fries that I can make, maybe more orange, and other parts that don't have to be quite as orange. Therefore, we have a little bit more control over exactly how we're spreading this color. All right, so we got the fries done. Let's paint over the bun as well. It's cool. We could actually probably do the cheese on top of the bun. Just add some nice orange color to that as well. Not that it needs any more orange color, but, in American food photography retouching, you're looking to add color where maybe there isn't even really color. All right, so we're going to continue painting here. Finish up the bun, come across the highlight here. Cool. All right, so let's just look at a quick before and after. We shut that off. There's before and there's after. So it's subtle, but we just add a nice pop of color there. That's great. Let's add a nice darker red color to the bacon. So let's add another solid color adjustment layer. And I'm going to go with a nice, wine red, but I really want this red to have some good saturation. So we're hanging out over here in the red area. Hit OK. Set the blend mode to soft light. Look at the bacon, see how red and deep and rich that becomes. We're going to fill this layer mask with black again by using that Command-or-Control-I hotkey after we have selected the mask. Grab the brush tool again, right there, and I'm going to make the brush a bit smaller, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint over the bacon. You can see it's making it quite, it's adding a lot of depth and color to our bacon, contrast, color, all of that. Very cool. All right, there that is. And then, of course, we need to get the piece of bacon here in the back. I'm probably going to reduce the opacity of the brush tool a little bit more. And go ahead and just paint over that as well. So there's before with the bacon. There's after with the bacon. We just add, a nice amount of colorization to that. And then if you like, we can even just completely zap all of the color from the white of the egg. That's pretty easy by just adding another solid color adjustment layer, convert the color to white, and then set the blend mode to saturation, which is going to make the entire photo black and white. Don't worry about that. Remember, we're going to select the mask, go Command-or-Control-I to fill it with black. Again, grab the brush tool. This time we're going to set the opacity to about 100%, and I'm just going to paint over the white of the egg. And this is going to just get rid of every bit of color that is in the white of the egg. Again, we know that the white of the egg should, in fact, be, pretty colorless. In fact, the more colorless it is, probably the more it's going to contrast with the rest of the burger and all of these other colors that we are working with. So there we go. The white of the egg, the red of the bacon, the orange of just about everything else. I suppose you could throw some magenta on the red onions as well. We are not going to do that here. What we are going to do is create a new layer, however, and we're going to name this layer D and B. Well, B, not G. And this is going to be our dodge and burn layer. Now we're going to fill this layer with gray. This is kind of like my quick and dirty way of dodging and burning, I should say. This is not the way that I typically would dodge and burn, but this is a nice quick way to jump into the dodge and burn game. So we're going to go edit fill, and we're going to fill this with the contents of 50% gray. Hit OK, that's great. I'm going to set the layer blend mode to soft light. At this point, we're ready to grab the dodge or the burn tool. I like to start with the burn tool and work with my shadows first. and then go to the dodge tool later. So I've got the burn tool. I've got it set to the range of midtones with an exposure of, let's go like 25%, 24%, whatever. And I usually tick protect tones on. All right, so we're going to zoom in on the photo, and I'm going to make the dodge brush a little bit bigger. You can just right-click and drag the size up if you like. And I'm basically going to start just clicking over any areas of the photo that are kind of shadowy already. So I'm just going to paint over these shadowy areas and just accentuate those shadows a little bit more. I'm looking to just make sure I build out the shadows as much as I can. So underneath the lip of the egg, right, where it's kind of dropping down onto the bacon, and here with the cheese, back to the other piece of bacon, through the middle of the bacon, where the burger kind of meets the bun. We want to increase that shadow a little bit. It's going to just, again, provide more depth, more separation. That's all good stuff. Shadow across the top of the bun, maybe shadow underneath the bun a little bit more, and on the back side of the bun where it's not being lit with that highlight. All right, so now that we've done that, we're going to grab the dodge tool. Same settings, mid-tones, exposure of about 25%. I like to leave protect tones on, like I said. And now I'm basically going to do the opposite of that. Anywhere where I kind of see a highlight, I'm going to paint over and just accentuate the highlights, therefore bringing out dimension, depth, detail, all of that good stuff. Here on the front of the cheese, this highlight, that's an important highlight. That's almost like a focal point. So you want to make sure that looks good. You want to make sure it doesn't look too plasticky. So just be careful when you're working with that. The highlight on the side of the egg yolk, make sure that's nice and bright, as well as highlights on the egg white itself. Go ahead and boost this highlight on the bun, as well as the harsh highlight. I'm going to sort of fade it out into the bun a little bit more. And then actually, if I zoom out, we can even do some atmospheric dodging and burning. So we can sort of make this a little bit brighter back here. This line, make it a little brighter, a little light over there. A little light down around the sides of the image. All that stuff never hurt. Now, with our dodge and burn layer, if I set this to the blend mode of normal light, you can see the changes that we've made. If I go back to soft light, it just applies them to the image, drops out all of that 50% gray and leaves the lights and the darks. So if I shut the dodge and burn layer off, you can see that's before and there's after. So we're just adding just a nice little kick of detail right there into the middle of what we've got going on. Now, we do want to top this effect off before we do our final round of sharpening with just a little bit more color and tone punch. We're going to do that with a gradient map adjustment layer. So you can go layer, new adjustment layer, gradient map, and you can name it whatever you want. We'll just name it color grade or something. All right, now that we've done that, it's cool looking black and white, but we don't want to keep the black and white. We're going to select the gradient stripe, and we're going to begin by double-clicking on the dark color stop. And the first color that we want is 493847. And actually, I'm going to make it a little bit darker and a little bit more saturated. So it's this very dark plum color. That's great. We're going to double-click the white color stop, and over here the color we want is B4AD7F. So we're getting a nice light tan color. So basically the way the gradient map works is we are mapping the darkest plum color onto the darkest pixels of the image and the lightest sand color onto the lightest parts of the image, and every level of color in the, or every level of lightness, I'm sorry, in the image is assigned to a different level of color. If it's very dark, it's going to be more plum, and if it's very bright, it's going to be more sandy colored. So that's the way that works. So if you want more of this orangey color, you can drag this color stop this way, and you can see more of the photo is covered by that sandy, tan, beige color. Hit OK. And what we need to do with this adjustment layer is set the blend mode to soft light. Now you can see this is doing a lot of things. It is adding color, but it's really adding a lot of contrast. It's adding too much contrast, I would say. So let's just reduce the opacity, I don't know, down around 30-40%, something like that. Maybe a little bit more if you want. Just, dial it in until it looks just right. All right, so the last step is going to be the sharpening, and we're going to use the hidden hotkey Control-Shift-Alt. That would be Command-Shift-Option and the letter E. That merges all of our visible layers to a new layer, and we'll just name this layer High Pass. This is not the best way to sharpen, but it's kind of a quick and dirty way to sharpen. Now that we've done that, we're going to go Image, Adjustments, where is it? Desaturate. There it is. Note the hotkey Shift-Control-U. That'd be Shift-Command-U on the Mac. I'm used to using that hotkey, which is why I sometimes forget where it is. We're going to desaturate this just to get rid of all the color. That makes that egg yolk look positively disgusting. And we're going to go Filter, Other, High Pass. Now, in the High Pass dialog, I'm going to actually zoom in on my image in the background just using Command or Control+. And I'm just looking to make sure that I don't go with so much high pass that I'm seeing this kind of weird halo-y image, but I don't want to go with so little that I don't see very much detail at all. We want to go with just enough that we're seeing just a little kiss of the edge detail, maybe like 1.3. That actually looks pretty good. Hit OK, and then we'll set this layer to the blend mode of soft light. We can see here if I shut that off, that little bit of sharpening goes away, turn it on, and there's just another little pop of sharpening right there added on the end of our image. So with that in mind, we can see that we have gone ahead and retouched this photo of food, beginning with a raw file right out of the camera, all lit up on location. A few moments later, it really didn't take all that long, we have this finished final image, which is ready to go to the graphic designers so it can be placed in this bar's usable menu. That's it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around and checking it out, watching it. Make sure you go over to the website. That's www.tutvid.com for more free video tutorials. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Hey, wait, stop. Before you click away from this video, I just want to remind you, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and hit that little like button. It helps this video go up. And going up is what I like. That's what we want to do. If you also have a couple more seconds, go ahead and leave a comment. That's cool too. That's it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, check out either of these two videos right here for more of the stuff that I do. This hand is weird. Right there. Thanks, guys.